Okay, let me get started. I want to welcome everybody today to the My Story. It is a series done by Naveen, and I'll introduce Naveen in a minute. First, let me tell you more about Thai Silicon Valley. Thai Silicon Valley is a founding chapter of Thai. We have over 60 chapters in 12 different countries. Uh, Thai Silicon Valley has fostered growth of more than 25,000 entrepreneurs. Community has collectively generated $1 trillion in wealth and creation, over 2 million jobs. We provide entrepreneurship with essential resources, mentorship, networking opportunity, education, and access to funding. The goal is to drive innovation and cultural diversity, right? That's what we're looking for. Now I want to actually introduce you to Naveen. Naveen has been doing My Story for a very long time. And he is not just a CEO and a founder of Akita, a cybersecurity and compliance automation platform, but he's a serial entrepreneur who has founded and led numerous companies in security and networking infrastructure industry. He was a founder or co-founder of Stark Security Act, Naya Networks, Ukiah Software, which was acquired by Novell. He, in the past, chair program and a board member of Thai Silicon Valley. He pursued his PhD studies at University of California, Santa Barbara, and holds an MS from Texas Tech and BS/MS degree from Birla Institute of Technology. Please welcome Naveen. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak, for a kind introduction. Really appreciate it. So good evening, good morning for folks if you're joining in from Asia Pac region or India. So we really welcome you all, and we're really excited to have you for our first My Story of this year, and with an amazing entrepreneur we have, which is Mohan Ananda, and I'll be telling you in a few seconds. Before that, so today, please make sure if you have any questions you want to ask him, put it in the Q&A part of the screen. And during the Q&A session, we'll try to address all of them, and you can get insights from Mohan's entrepreneurial journey. So looks like Mohan, if you can put on your video on. There you are. So how do you create multiple leading edge companies in a variety of markets? This is what Mohan has been doing for the last 3 decades. And one of his most recent ventures is a Zoomcar, which into a public company via a SPAC merger combination. As you might have heard this terminology a lot over the last few years. And so where he's the chairman of the board right now. And he's also the founding chairman and CEO, now executive chairman of SecondOpinionExpert, Inc., a healthcare services and technology provider for global telemedicine and many other companies. As well as he's been founder of many other companies, including Stamps.com, one of the pioneers that introduced technology allowing consumers to print postage online. Company achieved a valuation of approximately $6.6 billion in a recent acquisition by a private equity firm, Thoma Bravo. He obtained his PhD in astrodynamics and control from UCLA, MS in aeronautics from Caltech, and BE in mechanical engineering from Coimbatore Institute of Technology in India. He's also CEO of Ananda Foundation, a U.S. charitable foundation, as well as managing director of Achyutan Nair and Ishwari Amma Charitable Trust in India, as well as president of Panini Foundation, which is focused on assisting employees affected by automation and AI developments. As well as he has also published his memoir, Autobiography of an Immigrant, which is available on Amazon, and another book for entrepreneurs, Start Small, Dream Big, which is also available on Amazon. So with that, I would like to invite and hand it over to Mohan to share his exciting, colorful, and amazing entrepreneurial and professional journey with us this evening. So let's give him a big round of virtual applause. With that, off to you, Mohan.
Thanks a lot, Naveen. I'm really humbled to come before you and share my story. My story is just like anybody else's story. So there is really not much different, but it's kind of something personal. So maybe you can have the first chart. It's just something to guide. So uh, before I start, I will start telling about the three stages of growth in my life. One as a scientist, and two as a lawyer, and three as an entrepreneur. I mean, kind of before I became scientist, I was a student. So maybe the next chart will show you. Can I have the next chart, please? I grew up in a small but very beautiful village in the state of Kerala from India, and did my whole uh, high school education in the village. Uh, just to say that it was ready, but no electricity. So those are the days. No. I mean, if you look back, no electricity means no radio, no music, or any of those type of so-called technology stuff were not there. But one good thing, I did have excellent teachers. Teachers meaning they gave my foundational education. Then I moved to Tamil Nadu, which is an adjacent state where my parents lived. I did my, they call it pre-university in a very nice college. And then went to Coimbatore, did my undergraduate education, which is, it's called Coimbatore Institute of Technology. And then I decided to come to the United States to pursue my studies. Came in 1967. I came to Pasadena here, very close to where we live now, at California Institute of Technology as a student in aeronautics. Did my master's in aeronautics, and then went to UCLA, did my PhD in astrodynamics and control. So that's kind of a basic education. However, I had the privilege of working with some very, very smart people while I was in college. I mean, doing my, and one of my mentors was Richard Feynman, the famous Nobel astrophysics Nobel laureate. And so he gave me a lot of ideas or clues, which I am using even today. So I just want to share that with you. So education is the foundation. The next chart, please. Okay, as a scientist, I did a lot of interesting stuff. First, I worked at the North American Defense Command, which happened to be in Colorado Springs, actually in the Cheyenne Mountain. So they are responsible for primarily protecting the United States from any foreign attacks. They recognize when the first any missile or any intruder comes. So I kind of participated in it, and obviously as a coming from somebody from India, to get the various type of security clearances is kind of difficult, but they finally thought that I'm more valuable. So they gave me extremely, not only top secret, that it's what's called the compartmentalized clearances, which I obviously are required to have access to some of this information, which I participated in many ways to help. And then I joined Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena again, which is one of the NASA centers. And I started working on very, very interesting interplanetary missions. In fact, we were doing something for the first time, going to Mars, going to Venus, or going to Jupiter, all kind of interplanetary missions. And I had the privilege of doing some very, very fundamental work in areas related to astrophysics, related to gravitational physics. And also, I was primarily responsible for navigating to the planet. For example, generally, I just want to spend a minute on that area because it's very interesting. Most of the time, you get radiometric measurements and you solve using the radiometric measurements to find the location of the satellite. First, of course, when you launch it, as you know, you go into the Earth orbit. Then from Earth orbit, it goes into heliocentric orbit. And as you reach near the destination planet, what you have to do is to what we call the insertion maneuver to get into the so-called the planetary orbit. But in order to make the insertion maneuver, you need to know where exactly you are, because you have to apply the insertion delta V or the correction at the right way. And if you make an error by not knowing where you are, then you will lose the satellite. So it's a pretty critical event. But the problem is, from a radiometric measurements, what you are getting is the angular knowledge of the position, right ascension and declination, as an example. And then as you go farther and farther, the angular error is multiplied by the distance. The error in the position becomes larger and larger as you go farther. So it is not a very convenient way of getting the right information. So I had to come up with something more novel, which I believe is the current way of doing things. We did have imaging systems, cameras, but obviously not for navigating, just for taking images of the planet and nearby satellites or whatever the imagings do. But I used that images and said, instead of doing a radiometric measurement which gives you Earth-centered information, I want to convert that into the planet-centered information, which is a way to minimize the error. Meaning, when you get everything planet-centered, as you get closer and closer, the distance from the center of the planet becomes shorter, and the error in the similar error in angular error, which multiplied by shorter distance, so your error ellipse becomes smaller. So that system was done while we are flying in the satellite mission, and that has been now. This is the way things are done, and we obviously didn't have any issue inserting to the planetary orbits, and so that is I consider that is we call it optical navigation, and that's a contribution to the interplanetary space missions. And subsequently, I left there. Actually, I was recruited by the Department of Defense for starting the architecture and design and development of global positioning system, GPS. And I consider that work, what I did, is my real contribution to society at large. I honestly feel that way, because that is an area where this has helped immensely the whole humankind. I mean, it is helping everybody. And as a matter of fact, after I finished the design, and once the satellites were launched, and somewhere in the early 80s, I was interviewed by one of the Indian newspapers, and I made a comment. You're talking about is in 82 or 83 time frame. I made a comment to the news saying that eventually everybody will have GPS in their palm. I mean, I did make that statement. And obviously, I had no clue at the time there will be a phone system. In fact, in those days, we didn't have a mobile phone even. I mean, even after some years, the mobile phone is like a big box you have to carry around. I mean, it's really a pain in the neck. But that happened to become now everybody, almost the whole humankind, have this GPS in their palm. So that is something I feel I was part of it. I have played an important role. Even though GPS has become a kind of a navigation tool for everybody, it was really a weapon system. So the survivability of GPS was very important, and I have contributed quite a bit in that area. There are two issues. One, one particular thing is the signal itself has to survive if there is a nuclear, high altitude nuclear bomb. So how do you, because that creates what is called scintillation, or electromagnetic pulse will create scintillation of the signal. That means you cannot close the link. So you have to come up with a technology such that you can actually close the link. And these are all classified areas, so I'm not going to be able to talk about it, but we did that. Then another one is, suppose there is a conflict. We are talking about at the time, there is a potential nuclear exchange could happen. And if there is a conflict, they would destroy the ground system, which computes the location of the GPS satellite's position. And if once the ground is destroyed, the accuracy degrades, then the problem would become much, it's not valuable to the weapon system. So how do we get maintain the accuracy at least for a period of 6 months without any ground intervention or no ground measurements? So we came up with a technology which is, there are part of it is classified, but we introduced what is called the cross-link ranging. Every GPS satellite has, in addition to signal coming to the Earth, they have a signal to each other, which creates what's called the cross-link ranging, and that is processed on board and creates a continuous accuracy on a continuing period, not just 6 months, several years. It kind of becomes a network and provides that. That is something I was responsible, and that was I consider that as a great contribution to our Department of Defense. Now, I also became subsequently a kind of a U.S. liaison officer for the GPS between the United States and the NATO countries. I used to travel a lot. I was more like anytime my family wants me, I'm somewhere in Europe. So that became much more difficult in a sense, because my wife, being a working person, she's a physician, a neurologist. So her times she needs a lot, and we had young children, and it became a little harder. So I was started thinking maybe I should change my career in a different form, so I don't need to travel that much. By the way, I did publish a number of scientific papers related to, in prestigious journals related to both my missions, interplanetary missions, and GPS. And I have traveled around the world giving, presenting papers, giving lectures, and things of that type. In fact, as a matter of fact, there is one interesting aspect associated with that. I was giving a paper in Tokyo, and after the paper was given, of course, when a lot of people will come and talk to you, and one of the gentlemen was the director of ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization. His name is Kurup. So he came and introduced himself, that he's from India, from actually ISRO, that mission is in Tumba. Tumba happened to be outside of Trivandrum, where I come from. So he said, "You sound like a Malayali. Are you from Kerala?" I said, "Yes, I'm from Kerala." So he said, "Oh, that's fantastic. Maybe if you have time, then you should come and visit us at ISRO and give a lecture on what is going on at Jet Propulsion Laboratory and various interplanetary missions." I said, "I would love to." So I went, because of that, I scheduled a time to go to, when I went to India, I went and gave a lecture at ISRO. And I originally thought there would be a small number of people, maybe 15, 20 people. But to my surprise, there were over 500 people in the audience in a big auditorium. And I was a little, I didn't expect that. So I was not that prepared for that kind of a presentation. But I managed. I had a very, very nice talk, and everything went well. But the key aspect of it at the time, under Kurup, was working Abdul Kalam. Kalam was a scientist working on various missions. And he was introduced to me, and I met him, and we had a wonderful kind of exchange of ideas. I mean, I was much young, but he was so generous, very friendly. This is before he became the president of India, but I didn't get an opportunity to meet him after he became president, but I still remember that encounter with him. I just want to share. That was a very wonderful experience. Can I have the next chart, please? Okay. Now, once because of the reason I just said, my family being kind of needed my time back here. So I said, maybe I shouldn't be traveling in the, various NATO countries. By the way, I've gone to practically every part of Europe all the time traveling. This is for work related. But of course, in the recent years, we started traveling for fun. But that's something different. But then I kind of thought maybe I should change my profession. In some way, I decided to go to law school. So of course, the real reason is I found out that most of the people in power, or people, those who are really make decisions in this country, they all look like they're all lawyers. So I said, if you can't fight them, join them. That's one of my kind of reasons to become a lawyer. And I was fairly good in school, because you've already done science, physics, math, and law is like logic. So it's more analytical. So I had less difficulty in going through the law school. In fact, I took my California bar. It was easy for me. I did very well. And I even sometimes start teaching my classmates and students how to prepare for the law school as bar exam as well as other type of courses. So I enjoyed being a lawyer. Then I started a law office working with primarily small and medium business in the area of corporate law, starting a business, how to set it up, how to issue shares, how you make sure that you do all the compliance requirements, regulatory requirements. And of course, being a technology person, I was also interested in the intellectual property areas, IP laws. So I was working with all these young companies, mid-sized companies, to how to obtain patents, how to apply for it, how to create the specification, how to make the claims, the right claims which will benefit you from if you're going to use it for any growth opportunities. So I was working with a number of startup business on the areas, worked with the entrepreneurs to raise capital. Raising capital becomes a lot of difficult problem because there are different type of capital, meaning seed stage or ventures stage or private equity stage, or of course going public. So all kind of spaces, and how do you do it and how to work with them. I was more of an advisory role. I was helping them set up connect the people, create helping them to create the deck, how to make sure that they do the right thing to get that traction from the venture. So I had a very good network of venture financing people. So that helped to work with entrepreneurs, and they used my contact, and I used their capability to learn, for my own purpose. And I also started helping them to do an M&A activities, the mergers and acquisition. So how do you find the potential similar or even roll-up strategies? How you create value by bringing complementary capability to the company. I mean, these are very interesting aspects in an entrepreneur. So I was advising them, working with them. But during that process, the beauty of it is I was learning myself. So I became I was trying to help them, but I am a student in my own way. So I learned quite a bit working with them. And I of course, that made me to start writing patents for myself. Even though I worked with a lot of new technology while at NASA or at DoD, I did not apply for any patents in my name, because when I apply, when you work them, it belongs to the company, and they didn't really do anything. So I didn't, but I knew that technology is, of course, the government has no issue with regard to whether you apply patent or not. So when I left and I started my own as a lawyer, I started thinking maybe I should have some of my own patents. And as a matter of fact, I have now about 15 patents, which are pretty good. Some of them are like foundational patents, especially my initial 3 or 4 patents are in the e-commerce space, which are almost like every prior art, it goes to that. That means any e-commerce related patent today would have addressed my patent. I applied in 1992 or 93, and I got it in 96. This is the time internet is just in its early stage. Early stage meaning, of course, there is internet. I worked on the internet before, like the DARPA network, because I was whether at JPL or at a student at Caltech. So I'm familiar with it, but it's not the internet as you know today. The data is very, very, the bandwidth is so small, very limited bandwidth, and you can't really transfer a lot of information. But of course, I knew some or other, I felt that's going to change. I kind of, just like the GPS, handheld GPS I was talking about, I said this is going to be the significant increase in the bandwidth will happen. So not only you can send a few bits, you can send movies or huge information in a very, very short period of time. So I kind of knew it. That's how that pattern came into being, and that's really a kind of a foundational patterns in the e-commerce, and that made me to start become a entrepreneur. So that's my next stage as in my life. Go to the next chart, please. Okay, this is the current kind of a stage where I am an entrepreneur. I became an entrepreneur. I decided to start my own company, primarily because now I have certain knowledge. I've been working with a lot of entrepreneurs prior to that, and I know the issues, the good and bad, the risk associated with that, how you have to do it. And I was advising them. Now I am decided to do myself. And sometimes when you do, it's a little different than when you advise people. Like if you're a teacher, you can tell students this you should do, that you should do, and all. But when you're a student, you do yourself. It's tough. It's much more difficult. In fact, I hate to say I have quite a bit of failures, but that I don't mean the failures is bad thing. That's part of life. But failure really make you a better student. You learn a lot. I have, I just want to give three companies. I mean, there are many other companies also failed, but I want to highlight the three failed companies. One is Microsubstrates, Amazing Heads, and Utopia. Let me kind of spend a minute on each of the companies. Microsubstrates is it's a thin film substrates in the chip making industry. So there is some capital intensive part of it, and also, any time you do any kind of manufacturing, it takes more effort. And but the microsubstrates, even though it failed, it lasted for 22 years. So I don't consider that as a failure in the strict sense of failure. It really did. It employed a lot of people. It grew, and but the thing what happened was, by the time we were growing in some area, the plastic chips started coming, or the substrate plastic came, and we were metallic, very thin film concept, and so we couldn't compete with them. So we had to close it down. So from my perspective, it's, even though it's a fail because we didn't make any wealth associated with that, but it employed a lot of people. In fact, a very close friend of mine who was instrumental in actually starting the company and running the company, and for 20 years almost he worked there, and he had a good life out of it. So I feel pretty good, even though it's a failure, but it did some good thing for some years. Whereas Amazing Hits, it's actually today's Netflix or iTunes. We were a few years ahead of time. What it is basically streaming music, and of course eventually the bandwidth is ready to stream video. That's the Amazing Hits itself. And we actually talked to all the studios here, Universal, Warner Brothers, you name it, everyone, the CEO level. I went and talked to them. They were really nice. They were all very friendly. They're ready to, so we have to accumulate the content, whether it's music or a video or whatever, that we have to accumulate. Then you can stream it so that people can use it online. That's the whole concept of, just like your streaming service now, you see everybody is doing now. What happened to us those days, the record industry, they used to have record which will have about 13, 14 songs, out of which only 2 are good. The 10, 11, 12 are junk. So they were selling because of 1 or 2. So people had to buy the whole record. So the studios were not really sure whether we should stream only the good one. Meaning when you stream the one which people want. So they were reluctant to give us, but they were saying, okay, we'll do it. But that really took us some time to, of course, eventually Steve Jobs, iTunes, some or other convinced them, but that was about 2-3 years after we started the company. So we couldn't, we did raise some money a lot, but we couldn't sustain. So the company had to close down. If we could have sustained a few more years, we would have been one of those, if not the Netflix, if not the iTunes, not all those, but we would have been there. So that was an interesting experience, something could have been successful, but it did. The other one is Utopia, which is, I think, looking back, I don't know whether I would have entered into it, but we raised a few millions, 5 or 6, 7 millions for Utopia. But the Utopia is nothing but a large display in the malls across America. So you display news, music, and then periodically you get advertisement. That is the concept. And we actually had about 20 or 30 uh, malls, but there are 3,000 malls in the US. So you have to get at least 10 to 15%, 20% before like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or some big advertisements would come in. So we had about, I believe, about 30 each display cost at the time over $500,000. So that's a pretty expensive capital requirement. And I don't know whether that was the right thing to do. But today, same display you can buy it for probably 5,000 or 2,000. So the price had come down from 500,000 to few thousand. So which is because of the technology thing. But at the time, we were kind of not in the right place at the right time. So we had to close it down. So that's another, I mean, there was many other failures, but I don't want to go into it. But let's talk about some success. I also started stamps.com, which is basically it's directly out of my original, that 3 or 4 patents I got in the e-commerce related, which is basically the foundation for stamps.com. But the problem with stamps.com also, initially, it was really, really difficult to take it out. The reason is because we're going to print stamps, which is like printing money. And when you print stamps, the only way you can get approval is if the United States Postal Service tells you, yes, you can do it. If they say, screw you, that's the end of it. So it's almost like a binary. Either you can make it or you don't make it. So I had an extremely difficult time raising capital, because I used to go to Silicon Valley, in fact, to Sand Hill Road, every day for almost 2 months. I might have gone to 30. That's another good thing. I knew a lot of venture firms because of my working as a lawyer. So they know me. So they would love to hear from me. So I had a good way to get into them, give up the pitch, and I tell them, look, this is a story, so they will listen everything. But every one of them told me, Mohan, it's actually a good idea. It's very good. But unfortunately, USPS has not done anything really technical for almost 100 years. So I don't know how, if they say no, then you're out of it. See, if you're developing a drug, the FDA periodically approves drugs. That's their job. Even if your drug may not come through, we will take a risk and support you. But here, this we cannot really, unless they give you approval, then you come, we would be very happy to work with you. So I would not get any of the so-called the big name. I went to Kleiner Perkins, Sequoia, you name it. All the big guys that I used to know at that time, but every one of them said, nice, it's a good concept, but tell me when you have approval, then we'll talk about it. So I didn't get any funding there. The only reason of course, this is how it's very important, as I always tell people, the way you develop a relationship through network. If you know, these people I went on Sand Hill Road, they all knew me, but still they're not ready to help me out, because they think this may not happen, so I don't want to be involved. But another friend of mine who is in the venture business, his name is Brad Jones, and Brad, at the time, he was what called Brentwood Ventures. Then later on, he moved to Red Point. Red Point is a huge multi-billion-dollar. The Brentwood Ventures were reasonable. So I knew him as almost like a friend, because I approached him when I started microsubstrates. I had I gave him a pitch, and I told him, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but this is interesting. because this will help future entrepreneurs how to do things. So I went to Brad and told him, look, I'm starting this company. Maybe you may want to look at it. And he said, yeah, give me the business plan and the deck and all. He will review. And he said he's interested. So give me the pitch. So I gave the pitch, and after he said, yeah, we will have to do some do some due diligence, and then we may be interested in investing. And he asked me how much you want. I wanted $3 million. Then I on the way out, he said he will get back to me. So I was getting out of his office. Then I just walked back and said, Brad, I'm really very much in need of some money right now. Maybe you can help me out. He said, how much you want? I need about $100,000. He said, but this is for some expenses we have already occurred and we need it. Then he said, okay. So he went there to inside and brought a check, wrote a check for $100,000 without any piece of paper, no documentation, no agreement, no nothing. I didn't expect. I was so amazed. But the people are so nice. So he gave me, I took the check. I went home. I mean, I had to almost spend it on the same day I spent. But in the meantime, we got a kind of a inquiry from a company from Arizona, circuit components. They came to us and said, we would love to work with you and work and invest in microsubstrates. But only condition is you have to move the company to Arizona in Tempe. I said, that sounds like good, but there is a problem because I have some agreement with, not agreement, a verbal agreement with Brad, because he's planning to make an investment. I can't, without his permission, I can't do it. So I called and actually met with Brad and told him that I have this problem. Somebody is interested. Well, I need your advice. So he told me, don't worry, Mohan, let them take it, let them come in, we can take care of it. That's not a problem. So obviously, then we moved the company to Arizona. And of course, I paid the 100,000 plus something to, so we became a good friend from that. But even though he didn't get an opportunity to invest in Microsoft, in a way, it was a good thing because it didn't do well, but it lasted for many years though. That connection was there. So I went to meet with Brad and told him this about my stamps concept. So he liked it. He said, it's very good. How much money you want? I said, I need 6 million. That's my, based on my, he thought about it and said, and I did tell him, look, I went to Silicon Valley, all these people, everybody turned me down. But then he said, okay, you know what I will do? I can give you 2 million, but if you can get the other 4 million, that means you have to find the 4 million. Then, I'll. So I said, oh, thank you very much. That's very fantastic. Then I said, can you give me a term sheet such that it says what it? So he has a, there is a template step. He made some changes to it and gave me a term sheet. So then I was just like last time. I was walking out of the door, turned around and came back and told Brad, can you just, I know I have a lot of people I can talk to, but can you recommend 2 other people so that I can say that you gave me the names? So I said, no problem. So he gave me 2 names. He gave me Jeff Brown and Tom Clancy. Not Tom Clancy, the writer, but anyway, Jeff. And so I came home, and immediately after I called Jeff first. And I thank God he was on the phone. He took the phone because all these people, they won't even take the phone. But anyway, he took the phone. So I gave the song and dance and all these things. I said, Brad gave me your name, and he told me this. He didn't tell me, but I told this. Brad told me that before you talk to anybody, call Jeff, and if Jeff likes it, then it will be good before you talk. So I told Jeff, look, if you don't want, that's fine, but you have to let me know. He said, did you get term sheet? Yes, I did. Can you fax it to me? So I said, sure. So I faxed the term sheet to him. Within about a half an hour, he called me back and said, Mohan, I'm in. So now I have, but he will do 2 million. That means same as Brian. So I have now 4 million. So now immediately after that, I called Tom Clancy. Tom is in San Diego, but it is similar to Jeff. He took the phone. I said the same, all these stories to him. And he also asked whether you have a term sheet. So I said, yes. I told him both Brad is 2 million committed. Jeff is committed 2 million. But if you don't want, I can ask others. But I thought because Brad told me that I should talk to you before I talk to somebody else. So I sent to him, and after about half an hour, he called me back and said, yes, I'm in, I have 2 million. So I got that 6 million that afternoon. I mean, 6 million commitment. Of course, they have to go through a lot of due diligence and paperwork and all. But that is how the initial capital came into for stamps.com. And it's an interesting story. I would like, I mean, I've written all these things in my book. So if you don't have much to do, you can read that. That will come in. It's all real. So entrepreneurs, it would really help. Then I have also started, just to make my stories short, I started another company called InvestNet, and InvestNet is a financial tech company, and we started here in Los Angeles. And then the real reason it became successful, in my opinion, because we did all the work in India, and of course the company went public. It's on New York Stock Exchange. Of course, stamps.com went public. We raised a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of stories, and we finally sold it to Thoma Bravo for 6.6 billion. I mean, it's a lot of details in it. I don't have the luxury of time to go through all those things. And then, of course, I also took another company public in London Stock Exchange. It's called Jab Ventures, and Jab Ventures is purely a venture fund company, and it is we did it primarily because we had the company in the Guernsey, because of tax reasons. It's easier because but even though our office was in London, and we invested in a few companies, including one company. One is called RM Auctions. It's a high-end classic cars auction company, and RM Auction was recently sold to Sotheby bought it. Now it's called RM Auction Sotheby, and it's a very good success aspect. And then just to make life shorter, I want to, in a very recent year, I started a SPAC, Innovative International Acquisition Corp, and it went public, NASDAQ. We raised 230 million, and recently we closed acquisition, a demerger with Zoomcar Holdings, and they are it's like an Airbnb for cars. It's primarily in emerging market, India, Egypt, Indonesia, and they're going to grow into South Africa, Turkey, Brazil, and a few other countries. And they're currently working with very closely. We haven't announced it, but hopefully we will be able to announce with Uber strategic development. So it has a significant opportunity to grow, because we have about 95% market share in India, and we are growing in other areas as well. And we have now I'm also involved in. Oh, by the way, I'm the chairman of the company, and I do a lot of almost, if not weekly calls with them, but I work very closely with the management, and they have an excellent management team or young people. This is similar to my stamp story. The stamp story, when I brought in everybody out of almost like college, whether it's Stanford or Harvard, MBAs, they came and kind of with maybe a year or two experience, but they very enthusiastic, aggressive, ambitious, and which, thank God, they all made very well, everybody. But some of them already retired. So it's something similar to that. In Zoomcar, we have young, the CEO is a young person. His name is Greg Moran. And we just hired a very interesting person from Flipkart. Flipkart is bought by Walmart. And he's the president. His name is Adarsh Menon, and he's also coming from the same state I am coming from, in Kerala. So we have a very good relationship, and they have an excellent team. So hopefully, in the next months to year, it will grow very rapidly, and I'm very optimistic on that. And of course, I have other potential. I call pre-IPO companies, Second Opinion Expert. And we have two companies in India, IGDS Technologies, Innovation Endeavors. So there are a lot of activities going in, and I keep myself fairly busy and enjoy. Next chart, please. Yeah, which I already kind of said. I have written two books. One is Autobiography in Immigrant, and I have this. I don't know whether you guys can see me. I see this book I am holding, and that's Autobiography Immigrant, and the second book, Start Small, Dream Big, and both are available on Amazon. And the first book is it's more like a personal life story. It's very similar to what I have just given here. But the second book is, I think it's a guide for entrepreneurs. Anybody thinking starting a business or growing a business, and even really becoming big, and how do you, it also has other parts, meaning once you become public, and if you want to sell it to a private equity or some exit strategy, when you create a wealth, how do you protect your wealth from a tax point of view, from an estate planning point of view? How do you transfer the wealth to the next generation? And things of that type. I think it's a great book. Of course, I got a lot of feedback which says it's very good, but it would be a good thing for entrepreneurs who are interested in growing big. I'm almost in the finishing stage. I mean, I finished it, but my publication people are reviewing it. There is a book I'm writing called Looking Back, which is it's almost like a top. It's a coffee table top, book. It has a lot of interesting. We have traveled almost 100 countries, but I don't have all of them. But many are reflected. Many cities are there. A lot of pictures I took. I think I am a photographer. I take a lot of pictures, so I put these things together, and that should come out hopefully in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And I'm also finished another book, which of course it's an early stage of review by my publishing. It's called Life and Artificial Intelligence. This is an interesting, in my opinion, very, very valuable reference book. Because I think AI is going to change everybody's life. And it kind of reflects that aspects in that book. And once the book comes out, I would strongly recommend not just the adults, children in the high school should have access to that education. In fact, I would even recommend there should be a course in high school about AI. Not creating out AI. What is AI? How is it going to affect? What type of things we will start seeing? What changes? What disruptions? What chaotic things will happen? Or what are the consequences? I think it's very important for the high school students. And obviously, the college students should have access to that. So I think that's in my mind, that's a good contribution. And it's a pretty thick book if it is. I mean, we have to wait and see how it comes out. But I hope this comes out fine. And the next chart, please. Okay, I have some charitable work I do quite a bit, as much as the foundation, and primarily the Ananda Foundation does a lot of charitable work in the area of healthcare to people across a part of the world, actually. Now, I mean, quite a bit in India, but even in this country, and we have done quite a bit for veterans, actually, here veterans. The reason is veterans, as you probably know, veterans have a lot of issues, and the VA does not really, they're not sometimes that nice to the people. So we have done something to do some help information, and that has helped them to get their continued health care as well as their disability benefits and things like that. So we do quite a bit in Ananda Foundation. And we have a family, so this charitable trust, which is primarily for people in India, which we do areas of healthcare, financial assistance, education, and things of that type. Then recently, a friend of mine started a foundation called Panini Foundation. In fact, there's a friend who started a company called Jiffy.ai. His name is Babu Sivadas. And he asked me to run the foundation because I'm knowledgeable in running it. So I'm working with him. This is primarily to help employees who are currently displaced or who will be displaced by the growth of AI. And this is more of it. And it's a fantastic concept because the foundation owns, is the majority shareholder of the Jiffy.ai. They own close to, I don't know, about 15 to 20% of the whole company is owned by the foundation. So that's a very, very good charitable work. And I'm happy to be part of that. Next chart, please. Okay, this is just a kind of finishing thing. I want to make some observation about AI because I think AI is going to change our life. And because of that, so I make some of them may sound like a prediction, but this is my observation. And I just want to read it instead of going through it, but because my book kind of covers it. So you may want to, when the book is out, anybody interested can get a copy and look at it. It's actually, it will penetrate every aspect of life. It has, and it will create chaos in the workplace. It has started in some areas, but in every area, chaos meaning a lot of unemployment will come. But it's not a bad thing. It's very similar to, I think, when the Industrial Revolution happened. There were a lot of changes, very similar to that. So the mundane job, repetitive jobs will be eliminated. But there will be innovative jobs, very good jobs with the right skills. That will come, and there will be many, even some of them we don't know how they are today. And the important thing is high-tech companies. Am I ready to close? Or do I have a minute?
Yeah, Mohan, we had some time for Q&A, but looks like we overwent. It's already 7, so we close.
Oh, okay.
So if you can wrap it up, there are a few questions.
Like,
so we have a few questions, and so then we can wrap it up. So I think we can wrap it up together. It will be good.
I'll just finish it. So anyway, the thing I want to give that there is going to be some impact and benefits due to AI, and we should all look forward to the good part of it. It's going to do better than people predict some bad things. I'll stop there.
All right, thank you, Mohan. So there are 3 questions. I know we are already off, so we'll just take those. Mohan, I appreciate your sharing your very wonderful journey of almost like I would call it 3 phases of life, and a lot of inspiration for a lot of people and us. So first question is from Atul. He used to be the VP of M&A at Barracuda, which is owned by Thoma Bravo, and now he's a venture capitalist. He says it's a great honor to listen to you very impressive accomplishments. Could you kindly share your story about stamps, which you did, and also more details on the acquisition by Thoma Bravo, if you want to? That was his question.
Yeah. Okay. Should I answer now?
Yeah, please. And if you can keep it, we have to be just, short so we can finish it up and get a lot of, yeah.
Yeah. When I wanted to know, even though it's not exit time, I mean, because it's a public company, people can sell their shares and, but I thought every company, when it reaches a certain stage, especially, we are under the thumb of United States Postal Service. So I wanted to have an exit. I mean, exit meaning a real exit. So I said, of course, my management team, they were not really thrilled to exit because it's they thinking the value. At the time, the market value was about 4 billion. And I thought it's worth 10 billion. So it's 2.5 times. But I started talking to some of the PE people I know, and say that whether there is an interest, because you can't do anything really externally because we are a public company. But then I didn't get any feedback. Nobody showed any interest. Nobody did anything. But all of a sudden, after maybe a few months, we got a letter saying that they are interested in making an offer to buy. But I think it was like 5.5 billion or 5 billion or something like that. So we said, our estimate is 10, or my estimate is 10, and how can we sell at 5 or 5.5? So we said, no, there is no, I mean, we have to go through the formal board meeting, and because it's when there is a genuine inquiry, we have to respond it very properly. But we did it for this meeting, obviously we have lawyers who would advise us. We did that. And then once that is done, to our surprise, there is another offer came. And that offer was for 6.6 billion. And then even though 10 is farther than 6.6, but then internally we came to a conclusion, because in order to reach 10 from 4, it may take at least 2.5 years. We could if we sustain, but if the economy is bad, we may not reach it. But if you get 6.6, if you invest it in 2.5 years, if the economy is good, it will become 10 anyway. So we said, okay, let's go with it. So that's how the transaction did take place. I don't know whether I answered correctly.
Yeah.
But that is,
No, thank you. One really appreciate it. So I think I'll just skip to the last question, which is, what do you think of bootstrapping, from one of the anonymous attendee?
bootstrapping for a startup?
Yeah.
I think bootstrapping is an extremely valuable thing to do. In fact, I would say the way, for example, I'll give you one specific comparison. If you're a professional services company, okay, then you obviously don't need any real capital, because you're selling your people or talent. Yeah, you don't need to even bootstrap. You will get some revenue. You can but the bootstrap should be, if you're a professional services company, I would recommend you to have in parallel, a product concept. Because, I mean, even the Infosys, TCS, they're all professional services companies, they're very big. It is very possible, but product companies are much better. Because if you look at the valuation, so I would say bootstrap in the sense, take that some money that comes out of the professional services, bootstrap into creating a product, and that product should be the driving force to take it much further. So I don't know whether I answered. That's the way I would do it.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. No, this is really amazing, Mohan, really spending time here and, sharing your, obviously amazing and awesome entrepreneur journey. So with that, we'll adjourn our session. And again, Molly, thank you so much for helping out. She's the backbone of TIE, our programs and marketing side, with the slides for Mohan. And of course, Deepak, thank you for the, awesome introduction, as well as having you as a TIE Chief Operating Officer for the local office. So we really thank you all for all the, the great work you guys are doing. So with that, we'll wish you all a wonderful evening, and we look out for our next My Story event. So we'll bring in other amazing entrepreneurs just like Mohan we brought in today. Thank you,
Thanks,
Mohan. All
thanks,
right.
thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.